Good afternoon, and welcome to the presentation using databases. Okay, so we have some objectives for this presentation. So in this presentation, we will learn the definition of a database, those commonly used applications of a database, popular database software, and databases and how they're used on the internet. Okay? Okay, so what is a database? A database is a collection of information that is organized so it can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. And the definition comes from whatis.com. Okay? So you've noticed on the slide here I have easily bold and highlighted. That's because easily is the key word when we talk about databases and the difference between a database and a spreadsheet. Okay? So a database eliminates unneeded repetition of data in data sets. A lot of times when people collect data, like an address book or customer information, some people put it all on a spreadsheet. But when you have larger organizations or small businesses, they tend to collect a lot of different addresses and cut from the customers. And so the spreadsheet can only hold so much data. So an example of a database would be a phone contacts. So in the phone contacts database, it collects different fields like the name, address, and phone number, home phone number, and some other information there, depending on what the needs are for the organization using the information. So it has different fields, and all of this is put into what's called a database table. Database table is similar to a spreadsheet, where our items are listed by row, and it collects all of the information that you put into it. So this is put into a table, but this is by the user. This is the screen that the user uses to input the data, and it goes into the database. Okay, so why use a database instead of a spreadsheet? So like I mentioned, spreadsheets are designed to display calculations and sort data for smaller amounts of information. So when you're trying to locate specific data or get a summary information on that data, it's easier to use a database. Because when you try to do that with a spreadsheet, it could be tedious to find that specific information. So here I have a diagram of what a spreadsheet looks like. And again, you have the columns across the top, just like the fields that were on the database entry. And then you have a lot of rows here. So if you're trying to find certain information, yes, you can sort by some of these columns to kind of group the information. But if you have two or three entries with the same name or the same address, you won't know which record is the one you're actually is the most current and things like that. Okay, so the database helps eliminate that problem. So databases improve data manipulation, performance. Separate data tables are created and linked together by a common field described as a data table relationship. Okay, so what that does is, like I showed you the spreadsheet before, that spreadsheet format is kind of broken out into separate tables. So here's an example of that. So we have a students table and we have a classes table. So in a spreadsheet, all this information would be side by side. But if one person had multiple classes, you would see like the phone number. You would see the phone number repeated 3 or 4 times, depending on how many classes that student had. So that's data that you really don't need. All you need to know is what class they're taking and what is the phone number once. So if you break it down like this, another table is created to link, which creates a relationship between the students table and the classes table. So if you want to find out what class, in this example, Susan has, it would link it here. I'm sorry, not Susan, Zachary, 6001 would be linked here. And that matches up with class 9003. at the bottom. So you see 9003 is American history. So if you did a query, and a query means you give it a criteria of the kind of data you're looking for, this does that calculation for you and brings up only the information that you're searching. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, again, so data will allow users to query data and quickly display the results from large data sets. And databases can be designed to allow multiple users to access the same data sets at the same time. Now, in some project management programs, if you have a spreadsheet in there, multiple users can access that spreadsheet. But again, there's only so much data and so much information you can get from a spreadsheet. So databases were designed to have multiple users accessing the same tables at the same time, either manipulating it, changing it, or updating it in real time. So that way that the data that you access is more current and more up to date. Okay? Okay, so this diagram has the layout of two different sites with multiple users at each site. You have 2 users here, 2 users there, sending information to these computers, and those computers are sending the information that you're requesting to the SQL Server, which is the main database that holds all the information. So all 4 users will be able to access that one database at the same time. Okay? Alright, so I have a video that's going to kind of review and talk about some of the things I just discussed, but it gives you a clearer picture. So let me go ahead and get that started.
Hi, my name is Taylor and I'm going to give you a high-level overview of database architecture. Understanding the big picture and principles of database management will help you as you're getting into the more technical concepts like ERD further down the road. So let's say you're opening your own online store for something like specialty cat accessories, and you want to be able to keep track of all sorts of information surrounding your sales. Most people would just open a spreadsheet and start putting in things as orders come in. Maybe it looked like this. Mary's our customer, she buys a cat leash, and you capture all this information. And you just record this information for each of your customers that trickle in. But maybe later Mary buys something else, like 3 cat leashes, and at this point she's moved to a bigger place to have room for all her cats, so her address is different. Now you've got redundant information, some contradicting values for your customer's address, and if your specialty cat store got enormously popular, these issues would just escalate. Mary calls to ask about one of her orders, and when you pull up her information, you get 3 different addresses, all these disorganized orders, and you're not even sure you're looking at the correct customer because there are 3 different Mary Johnsons in your spreadsheet. You can see how this might lead to a messy situation. Shipments could get sent to the wrong place, customers might get mixed up, and the wrong products could get sent to the wrong people. So how would you resolve this? Instead of having just one massive spreadsheet, you'd separate the information into different bite-sized tables. So with our cat store, for example, you might start by creating a table that lists all of your customers, and then a separate table that lists out all your products, and then another table that records each of your orders. This separates the data you're pulling in a much more efficient way. So here's what your customer table might look like. You can see we've got Mary again, but now she won't be repeated into several different rows. Any change to her address, contact info, or even name can be updated in this one consolidated place. The product table would have all your cat accessory inventory. As you add or remove items, this would be the one place where you'd make those changes, and orders would keep track of every single sale you make. Now these tables, although separate, have connections to one another, and it's these connections that form the database. Let's dive in and take a closer look to see what these interactions look like. We'll start in the customer table. Let's say someone goes to our online...
I'm going to stop the video right there because it goes into more in-depth detail about how a database is designed. But what he just covered right there kind of generalizes and gives you a visual of what I was trying to explain before, as far as the relationship between the different tables and how data is broken up into different segments. Okay? So does anybody have any questions about this part, about databases up to this part?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so if you want to see that the rest of that video, I have a link here at the bottom of the video and there'll be a link in the reference page of the presentation, so you can take a look at that on your own. So we'll move on. Okay, so now I want to talk about some of the popular database softwares that are out there in the market today. The most popular out there right now is Microsoft Access. Now, Microsoft Access is a software that's part of the Microsoft suite. A lot of times the suites are sold a little differently, the way that Microsoft sells the entire suite. They usually include Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and I think Outlook. Outlook is part of the main one. But on some of the other one, on the professional level of the Microsoft suite, they'll also include Access. Access is a little bit more detailed as far as the how they the data. I mean, how creating a database with Microsoft Access. It's a little bit more detailed, and you have to spend a little bit more time to get familiar with the tools and designing it. But it uses the same structure of separate tables for your data. Okay, Access is also more for an individual to use on their individual computer as opposed to larger organizations. Some small organizations use Access because it can handle a good amount of data, but for larger organizations like medium-sized or corporations, Access can't handle that much data in a timely fashion. Because a lot of times when customers call in, the customer service people are accessing databases, and because of the way that Access handles that data, it's a lot slower. And so you'll have a customer waiting online for whatever, trying to answer some question that the customer service person doesn't have access to because they're waiting for the information to get to them. So that's one of the issues with Access as far as use with larger organizations. But it's good for like a personal use, like on your home computer. You can develop an inventory of your home or your own contact your contact database, and so that's what that's commonly used for. So another software that's out there, it's also developed by Microsoft, is SQL, and it's used in a SQL server. And that structure kind of looks like the diagram I showed you before. We had a server in one location and multiple users accessing that same data. So SQL is made to handle larger amounts of data for larger businesses and corporations. A lot of corporations use that SQL server to manage their data and maintain it. Okay. Another popular database software is the database called Oracle. It uses the same structure as SQL Server as far as having a server with everyone accessing that one server or multiple servers sharing the same information. But it's all to handle large amounts of data coming in, updates, being deleted or being changed, or even new data being added. So originally, all of these systems were called, well, the original database programs that were developed were had a title called Database Management Systems, or DBMS. Now what that was this was a software that allowed users to define, create, and maintain databases while providing controlled access to data. And all that means is that with the original softwares, the programmer could limit who could access what kind of data. Like if you wanted to have your customer service person looking at a customer record, you may not want that customer service person to look at all the financial information that customer has supplied to the company. That information would only be viewed by either accounts receivable or the accounting department. So there's ways to limit what you can view, and that's controlled by the database administrator. So that was the definition of database management system. That's how they that's how they developed the system to kind of keep control of that access. Okay. So the earlier forms of the database management systems didn't support related tables. So the way I showed you, I'd broken out. A lot of times the earlier software systems, the database applications, only had large bulks of data similar to spreadsheets. But again, they realized that it would slow down how long it would take to retrieve data. The computers retrieve the information faster when they're broken down into separate tables like that. Okay. So as time progressed, they did develop the relational database management system. Now what that means is that they provided features for all the same features as the database management system, but they also use it through related tables. And that increased the speed of accessing the data that was being used. Okay, so any questions about this?
No.
Okay. So next I wanted to talk a little bit about databases and the internet. So databases are being used every day on the internet. Every time you log on to the internet, you begin a search engine. In order for you to browse the internet, you have to use a search engine. The search engine is a software that's developed by a company out there, and whenever you use that software, that information is sent to that company that designed it. So it keeps track that that software is being used. So let me give you an example of Google. Okay, so as soon as you use the Google Chrome, information is sent to the Google database to let them know that that application is being used. On top of that, whenever you go to a website, it's also sent information saying that at this time, this user using the Chrome browser accessed this web page on this server, and it records that information in a database so that later on the marketing department can go through and request data, say what time during the day do people usually shop? So they develop the query that specifies that criteria of the time, give me a time of the morning, give me all the reports of all the people who went shopping between this time and this time. And the database will find it and pull it out and give it to the marketing team. And that's how they determine when's the best time to advertise certain products. So using the browser, and then username and passwords. When you go to a website that requires a username and password, like your bank or your credit card company or any department store, where they ask for you to set up a login username and password, the username and password is stored in a customer's database. Okay, so they keep track of that, and they track the same information that the Google information that I explained before is tracking. What time your account was accessed, what departments you went looking at, how often you log in, and things like that. So that assists their marketing department in the same way. So again, this is just a review of what I just mentioned. You have web access, so your database is being updated. Online shopping, they look at the products you selected, what time you selected them, how often you go back to select from. When you're on a browser, it looks for the items that you do a search for, and that is recorded somewhere so they know when and how is the best time to market what they want to sell to you. And then banks and credit card companies, they're tracking when you log in, and they send verifications to you too, because they want to make sure that the customer's logging into those accounts and getting the information is the actual customer. Now it's hard sometimes with security. It's sometimes an issue because you've heard stories in the news media about databases being or companies' data being hacked. Okay, because hackers, other programmers, know how to get around the security to access this information, which are maintained in a database, and they'll pull it from that to use for their own malicious needs. So that's one way. So I guess the point is that when you're on the internet, your information is being tracked, and they are being stored in databases. So that's one big way that companies use databases. Okay. And so I have this diagram here, and it shows kind of like the cloud. Are you familiar? You know where a cloud is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a cloud. So it's like having all your data stored in one area that you can access with any device. Well, database kind of acts the same way, because you can the same databases you reach using your desktop or your laptop, you also reach by using your phone or your tablet. As long as you're putting information in there, it's being sent to the cloud, and the cloud is redirecting it to the server that maintains the database. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, do you have any questions about any material that we've covered today?
No.
Okay. Well, if you don't have any questions, I do have a reference page that has some information, so you will get handouts of the presentation. So, if you have any questions or you want to look at some of the material where I got some of the information that I provided to you, the references are here. And so, if there are no other questions, that concludes my presentation.